The system tasked me with redeeming the male lead. I looked at the frail, thin boy and said nothing. Just kept shoving my homemade breakfasts into his hands. Until one day, the system burst into tears and came crying to me. "What have you been doing? The male lead's favorability hasn't gone up at all, and the villain's blackening value is about to max out." I blinked innocently. "But I've been making heartfelt meals for the male lead every single day." Across my vision, the barrage of bullet comments scrolled past. "Male lead? That's the villain, you fake fan. He used to at least have balanced meals like a stray dog. Now he's stuck with dragon fruit fried with eggshells. Who wouldn't go dark after that? A fool's blunder outstrips a wise man's best effort. Pack it up and go home. Forget redemption. Later, I ended up taking the villain home with me. One day, the crime syndicate reached out to him. He glanced at me cooking in the kitchen, then decisively turned them down. 3 months away? Forget it. I'm more afraid she'll poison herself with her own cooking. The system let out a sob of gratitude. "Sis, you're like a demonic cultivator in the world of redemption." Welcome to History channel. Subscribe to follow all our latest adventures. Story begins. The year I was at my absolute lowest, dirt poor and flat broke, I got bound to redemption system number 10086. The mission? Redeem the male lead from a welfare home. The reward? $20 million. I didn't even blink. Inside my head, the system wouldn't shut up, frantically chirping away like some customer service bot. "Hello? Can you hear the task I just released?" "Hello." Yep. That's how us Gen Z kids are. You get a random call. You freeze. Dead silent. It might be a scam. We're broke, sure, but paranoid like someone's always trying to steal the little we've got. The system panicked. "I swear it's real." "Then why don't you send me $500,000 first, just to prove it?" 2 hours later, my account balance ticked up. $500. I don't have high-level clearance. That's all I'm authorized to advance you. But if you really manage to redeem the male lead, headquarters will wire you the full $20 million. Promise? Yeah. And something that good just so happens to land on me? The system whimpered, almost tearful. "I don't have a great status in the system world, okay? They've already bound themselves to philanthropists, musicians, CEOs. You were the only one I could get." It cried in my head for 2 days straight. I finally caved. "Fine. For the sake of that $500, I'll play along." The system gave me a tip. To win the male lead's heart, you have to win his stomach first. I had a sneaking suspicion this system used to work in a romance novel. But whatever. I was a dutiful NPC. I did what I was told. I rode my little pink scooter to the school gate, armed with a carefully packed lunch, and waited to intercept the male lead. He stood tall by the entrance, already around 5 feet 7 inches as a first year. When he bent slightly to meet my gaze, his voice was cold. His eyes laced with something that looked like amusement. "What kind of love meal did you make today?" I clutched the still warm buns inside the thermal bag, answering seriously. "These buns. I needed the dough for a long time. They should be nice and chewy." Without a word, he reached in, took one, bit into it, and swallowed. I ate it. "Can I go now?" I lit up with joy, quickly stuffing the other 2 buns into his arms. "Make sure to eat them all, okay?" Just then, a bike sped by. It was one of his classmates. The kid caught sight of the buns, snatched one right out of his hand. "Well, look at that. A welfare brat getting handmade buns? What, someone actually wants to adopt trash like you." The boy's fists clenched at his sides. The other kid shoved the bun into his mouth without hesitation. "I skipped breakfast. Let me try." Crunch. The bun hit the pavement. The fat kid clutched his jaw, eyes brimming with tears. "My teeth. What the hell is this? Some kind of bun assassin? That's a brick, not food." I blinked, confused. "Ha. It's not good." As the bully huffed off to report the incident, the boy let out a low, bitter laugh. "Quit pretending. Isn't this exactly what you wanted to see? I tore off a piece of the bun and popped it into my mouth. Okay, maybe it was a little hard to chew. I gave an awkward smile. Tomorrow. I'll adjust the recipe, promise. Then I shoved the last bun back into his hand. Keep it. If anyone bullies you again, just throw it at them. Ever since that day, I began waiting for him at the school gates every single morning. The bun incident was a fluke. Try this. It's breakfast I made myself. This time, I followed a recipe I found online. It shouldn't go wrong. Just like always, he opened the lunchbox in silence and finished the entire meal right there in front of me. I'll bring something different tomorrow. If there's anything you want to eat, you can tell me in advance. He slowly lifted his indifferent gaze. Are you done playing yet? Ha! All this food. Isn't it just your little game? How long do you plan to keep this up? Haven't you had enough fun? I froze. What was happening? Then that familiar mechanical voice roared back to life in my head. Oh my God, what the hell have you done? The male lead's favorability hasn't gone up even a single point, and the villain's blackening value is about to blow through the roof. And hold up, why are you with the villain? Where's the male lead? My brain buzzed until, piece by piece, I started to connect the dots. So the boy in front of me wasn't Oscar Newman, the male lead, but Alexander Newman, the villain? The moment the realization hit, glowing bullet comments began flying across my vision. The villain used to at least eat some semi-balanced garbage. Now he's been downgraded to dragon fruit scrambled with eggshells. Who wouldn't go dark after that? A fool's wild guess beats a good man's careful plan. Pack it up. Forget redemption. Go home. I swear, I had no idea. The system was on the verge of fainting. Why is everything in your lunchbox such an aggressive shade of red? You trying to traumatize the villain? It's breakfast. I made it myself. What kind of decent person cooks dragon fruit with eggshells? Clearly panicking, the system pulled up my food delivery log from the past month. Rock-solid buns. Coca-Cola boiled eggs. Noodles cooked in leftover rice water. Okay. Now I fully understand why the villain blackened so early. After the system finished its dramatic scolding, I looked up at Alexander Newman with an apologetic expression. He sighed, clearly annoyed. What now? In the smallest voice imaginable, I murmured, I'm sorry. I didn't know you didn't like the food. I've eaten like this my whole life, so I guess I never learned what's considered good or bad. Alexander paused. For a moment, he looked stunned. Across my vision, the bullet comments were going insane. UV officially short-circuited the villain. Sincerity. The ultimate move. Villain at 3 a.m. Maybe I am the problem. I quickly followed up. Don't worry. I won't bring food anymore. According to the original plot, the villain was supposed to spiral out at age 18. Heartbroken over the heroine, saved by a crime syndicate, and from there, begin his twisted and chaotic descent into villainy. But thanks to my recent series of culinary crimes, he was already pretty close to giving up on life. To avoid being reprimanded by the Story Management Bureau, the system came up with a new strategy. I should contact the welfare home and adopt the villain. Keeping him close would be the safest way to prevent anything extreme. So that weekend, I made the call. The director on the other end sounded confused. You want to adopt who? Alexander Newman. Yes. He fell silent, then sighed. Alexander's always been a shady one. Sharp-tongued. Manipulative. Easily the most troublesome kid in the entire place. I heard someone's been delivering him lunch lately. Probably some trick he pulled to gain sympathy. Don't worry, we'll punish him properly. We've got plenty of other kids here. You can meet them first. When I hung up, my chest felt uncomfortably tight. Those kinds of comments. I'd heard them before. Many times. To my foster parents, I was always the problem child. They adopted me for the subsidies, then resented me, starved me, treated me like I didn't exist. The very first paycheck I ever earned, I used it to buy myself meat and vegetables. It was the first real meal of my life. I sat with the thought for a moment, then spoke again. Is Alexander Newman at the home right now? I'd like to come talk to him. By the time I arrived at the welfare home, the thin boy was standing quietly inside the office, dressed in a flimsy long-sleeved shirt. His head was lowered. His short hair looked freshly trimmed, the fringe ending precisely a centimeter above his brow bone, framing a pair of striking eyes. He kept his lips pressed tightly together, as if to lock every emotion inside. Did you take the gold bracelet Mr. Powell gave to Alice? The director asked sharply. No. Without hesitation, the director grabbed a feather duster and struck him hard across the back. Still lying? Who else would take it? I thought once you started middle school you'd mature a little. We've been supporting your education here, not raising you to be a thief. I heard from your teachers that you've been getting into fights too. Do you even know how many complaints we've received about you? Do you realize how many donors are watching this place? One kid like you could ruin everything. Can you afford to be responsible for that? It was too much to throw at a child. I hadn't noticed a boy walk up beside me. He tugged at my sleeve and gave me a sweet smile. Hey sis, he said softly. Are you going in? He was dressed neatly, his hair perfectly combed, and his face. Well, it was the kind of face that people liked at first glance. When I didn't respond, he smiled again and politely knocked on the office door. Director Ethan? The man turned toward him, and the harshness in his eyes softened immediately. Oscar, what brings you here? Aren't you supposed to be at your tutoring class? Oscar Newman, the male lead of this world. His eyes flicked toward the silent boy inside. Alexander Newman. Did Alexander do something wrong again? Oscar said. Please don't be too angry with him. I'm sure he didn't mean it. The director smiled warmly. You're such a thoughtful child. But don't try to speak for him. He made the mistake. He should bear the consequences. Oscar gestured toward me. Miss, she's here too. Maybe. Let's not embarrass Alexander in front of a guest. You are? I just spoke to you on the phone, I said politely. I'm Wendy Clark. The director gave a curt nod. Ah, Miss Clark. Yes. As you can see, Alexander Newman. Well. Alexander lifted his head slowly. That calm, lifeless stare, flat as still water, seemed to ripple faintly when our eyes met. Did anyone actually see him take the bracelet? I asked. On the way here, I'd heard whispers from the other children. Alice had woken up to find her bracelet missing. Only Oscar and Alexander had entered her room. Every child in the home was certain Alexander had taken it. The director frowned. Miss Clark, you don't understand our situation. Alexander has a history. So because of that, every time something goes missing, it's automatically him? I turned toward the sunny, smiling boy beside me and let out a quiet laugh. Why couldn't it be Oscar Newman? Or anyone else? Oscar had his fair share of hardship too. But why was it always the villain who was assumed to be broken? Oscar pouted, looking genuinely hurt. Sis, please don't accuse me of something like that. Then, Alexander suddenly spoke. I took it, he said flatly. I already sold it. At the same moment, a flood of glowing bullet comments scrolled past my vision. The little villain used to be kind to the male lead. When Oscar gave him a candy once, he covered for his crimes for years. He only turned cold after the male lead hurt him again and again. Last time he got into a fight, it was because someone bullied Oscar. They used to be close, like brothers. But while Oscar protected his good boy image, Alexander got buried in misunderstanding. That's what split them apart. I shook off the daze just in time to see the director strike him again, the slap landing square on his bony back. Spit flew from his lips and landed on Alexander's pale face. Then where's the money? In my room. Help yourself. With that, Alexander slowly straightened up and walked out. As he passed Oscar, the two locked eyes for a brief, unreadable moment. The director forced a chuckle. Ah, Miss Clark, please don't be alarmed. We actually have many sweet, well-behaved children here. Let me introduce you to some of them. I stared at Alexander's receding back and shook my head. No need. I'll take Alexander Newman. Please prepare the adoption paperwork. As I stepped out of the office, Oscar followed, his tone edged with disbelief. Why are you adopting him? He scoffed. He's a bad kid. I looked at him, calm and quiet. Then who counts as a good kid? You. Sure, you're more obedient, better dressed, and the other children like you more. But he's always been the one left out, hasn't he? Oscar Newman paused. Did someone say something to you? I smiled but said nothing. He added, but he's not easy to get along with. He's quiet, withdrawn, boring. That's just who he is. Yes, I replied. But that's a personality trait, not a moral failing. Some people like well-behaved kids because they're easy to raise. But others, they love the ones who aren't perfect, because they hurt, too. And besides, I added with a tilt of my head, aren't there already plenty of families lining up to adopt you? Someone put this on the record. The villain just overheard that and had a whole redemption arc in 3 seconds flat. He literally just agreed to work for a crime syndicate, was about to walk out the door, and then turned around and heard this. Instantly tamed. No fight left. Ready to go home with Big Sis. Please, villain, wipe that stupid little smile off your face. It's showing. To be fair though, she is soft and sweet and smells like sunshine. I'd go with her too. We love watching Big Sis break in the stray puppy. Carry on. I blinked and turned toward the boy standing not far away, clutching a thick envelope. You heard all that? He gave a small nod. That was his answer. Then, do you want to come with me? He responded in a low, clipped voice. No. Oh. That wasn't what the bullet comments said would happen. He walked past me into the office and handed the envelope to the director. Director Ethan didn't even try to hide his sour mood. That Miss Clark just said she wants to adopt you. These are the forms. Sign them. Alexander didn't pick up the pen. The director's patience was clearly thinning. What are you waiting for? I walked up beside Alexander Newman and gave an exaggerated sigh. It's okay. I get it. You're still mad because my breakfasts were so awful. I pulled today's lunch from my bag and opened the lid. It was curry rice with a ketchup smiley face drawn on top. Well, originally a smiley face. On the way over, the container had gotten jostled, smearing the ketchup into something that now looked more like a demonic grin. I made it for you anyway. Even if it's terrifying. Alexander stared at it for a long second. Then wordlessly, he reached out and calmly, gracefully closed the lid. The way he did it was so smooth. It was as if the cursed meal had never existed. In the next breath, he picked up the pen and signed his name in a single fluid motion. Twisted Little Mutt. Meet Green Tea Big Sis. It's a perfect match. One can tame the other. It's fate. Is she copying the male lead's tactic now? Girl boss energy. Taking notes. The bullet comments scrolled non-stop. And slowly, I began to piece together the truth about Alexander Newman. Before he entered the welfare system, he'd suffered abuse for years under his adoptive father. Only after the man's sudden death did the authorities find him and bring him here. But even at the welfare home, the other children avoided him. They said he was mean, violent, dangerous. Some even claimed he'd been the one to kill his adoptive father. He got into fights over the smallest provocations. Hit hard. Didn't hold back. Despite all that, he was brilliant. Top scores across the board. But the teachers, aware of his past, stayed wary of him. Afraid. Suspicious. It didn't take long before Alexander finished packing. He turned to me, hesitant. Can I take Owen with me to the new place? I looked behind him. There, tail wagging like a helicopter, was a stocky little Shiba Inu. Without hesitation, I scooped it into my arms. The Shiba Inu gave a token protest. Hey, I didn't agree to this yet. Once we got home, I showed Alexander Newman to his room. Owen, of course, wasted no time claiming the entire living room like it was his birthright. You go ahead and settle in, I told Alexander. I'll get started on dinner. If you need anything, just let me know. He just set down his backpack when he froze for a split second. A small muscle at his temple twitched almost imperceptibly. You're cooking. I nodded enthusiastically. Yep. I've been learning some new recipes lately. Don't worry. I've upgraded my cooking skills. It's definitely edible this time. I gave his head a light pat. His shoulders stiffened immediately. Actually, I'm not really hungry. I squished his cheek gently. Not hungry? Doesn't matter. You still need to eat to grow up strong. You could tell. Alexander Newman was so touched, he couldn't even speak. Meanwhile, Owen was grinning from ear to ear. My heart softened. I reached over and patted his head too. Don't worry, Owen, I didn't forget you. Owen's smile disappeared instantly. Mouth shut. Face blank. After bustling around in the kitchen for a good while, I finally went to call Alexander to dinner. He came obediently, washed his hands, and sat down at the table with textbook manners. On the plate, the braised pork glistened under the light, its dark caramel glaze shining with a slight char around the edges. It looked delicious, if I did say so myself. I watched him eagerly as he picked up a piece and brought it to his mouth. His Adam's apple bobbed twice. Then he let out a faint cough, eyebrows barely twitching in discomfort. Under my hopeful gaze, he cleared his throat and said gently, "Did you maybe add a bit too much salt?" Immediately, the bullet comments came flying in. The villain tried. He really tried. But his pretty little face is about to break character. He's wearing the pain mask now. This is his villain origin story. That pork looks like it's been through war. No way it tastes good. Is it that bad? I asked, my heart sinking as I took a piece and popped it into my mouth. He hesitated, just for a second, then quickly shoveled several mouthfuls of rice into his mouth and swallowed it all without chewing. No, it's fine. Goes well with rice, he mumbled. See, that's what I thought. Totally edible. But after 2 bites, I started to feel my throat getting dry. Salty. Like really, really salty. I ended up drinking 3 big glasses of warm water just to cope. When I looked back up, Alexander was watching me quietly from across the table. He seemed to steel himself before saying, "Maybe I could cook from now on." I blinked. He was only in 8th grade. You know how to cook? He nodded. Yeah, I learned a while ago. Wait, the villain is secretly a domestic genius. Or, maybe he just couldn't take another meal like that. Owen. I vote yes. With all 4 paused. Honestly, the bullet comments weren't wrong. I could admit it. I had effort, not talent. All right. Wanna give it a try? He nodded again. Okay. Alexander immediately stood up and walked into the kitchen. Despite how mature and composed he always looked, he was still just a kid. I hovered nervously outside the kitchen, worried he might cut himself with a knife, or burn himself on a stray spark of oil. Every clatter from the stove made me flinch. But soon, the air filled with the mouth-watering scent of stir-fried beef. The aroma was rich, with just the right kick of chili. I took a bite, eyes widening with delight. Alexander, this is amazing. He ducked his head quickly. His long lashes cast soft shadows over his cheeks. A faint red crept up his ears. After dinner, Alexander didn't say a word, just quietly started clearing the table and carried the dishes to the kitchen. His small figure moved back and forth between the living room and the sink. I grabbed the back of his shirt and tugged him gently out of the kitchen. I'll wash. You go do your homework. He looked down. I won't break anything. I smiled. In this house, we share chores. You made dinner, so I washed the dishes. That's how it works. The next morning, I was just about to head out to buy some clothes for Alexander Newman. The moment I opened the door, I found myself face to face with Oscar Newman. His perfectly delicate face was pressed right up against the door, and when it swung open, he lost his balance and nearly toppled over. Oscar? What are you doing here? I came to see Owen, he said quickly. The moment Owen heard his name, He let out 2 joyful barks and bolted out from Oscar Newman's bed like a bullet. Sorry to bother you, sis, Oscar added with a sweet smile. Also, the director asked me to return this to Alexander Newman. He held out a thick envelope. Inside was the money Alexander had handed over before. The so-called bracelet sale money. I took it, but as I did, Oscar swayed slightly. Hey, are you okay? He spoke softly. It's just sunny outside. I feel a little dizzy, but I'll be fine. I pulled the door open wider. Come in for a bit. He sat on the couch, proper and polite, though his eyes kept darting toward the hallway. When Alexander Newman emerged from his room, he overheard Oscar say, I heard sis used to make breakfast for Alexander Newman every day. I've never had homemade food from family. I kinda want to try it too. I twitched. You sure about that? Alexander froze mid-step and looked at Oscar like he'd grown 2 heads. He even opened his mouth. Rare. Oscar, I'm warning you. Don't. Oscar turned and smiled at me. As long as it's not too much trouble for you, sis. My own smile was more forced than friendly. Well, all right. Worried all 3 of us would end up in the ER, Alexander quickly offered. I'll help. Oscar chimed in. Then I will too. So there we were, cramped in my tiny little kitchen. Alexander washed vegetables. Oscar leaned over and twisted the faucet down. Water bills are expensive. That's kinda wasteful. Alexander chopped carrots. Oscar pointed at a stub of one. This piece isn't cut evenly. Alexander turned, voice flat as ever. You keep this up, and no one's getting fed today. Oscar puffed up. I just wanted you to do your best. Maybe you should leave the kitchen and let me help sis alone. Alexander wiped his hands. Fine. Then you're finishing all the food. Oscar tilted his chin, full of pride. Of course. He turned to me brightly. Let's begin, sis. Alexander silently brought out a tray of freshly roasted chicken wings, blackened beyond recognition, and placed it in front of Oscar. Eat all of it. Oscar looked at me, pitiful as a wet kitten. Sis. Even the male lead didn't expect it to taste this bad. Villain. This blessing is all yours. Enjoy. I'm crying. No one's eating tonight. Mission failed. Alexander sighed and turned away. That small figure slipped back into the kitchen. 15 minutes later, he emerged again. 3 dishes and a tomato soup. It's all we had left in the fridge. Make do. Oscar took a sip of the tomato soup, and his eyes sparkled. But he still muttered, It's okay, I guess. After dinner, Oscar offered to do the dishes. Before stepping into the kitchen, he even shot Alexander a glare. Don't even think about washing sis's dishes. I've got it covered. 10 minutes passed. Alexander came over to me quietly. There's a homework question I can't figure out. I thought for a second. It's middle school math. Shouldn't be that hard. Okay, give me a sec. I wiped my hands dry on my apron. Oscar's head popped up. What question? I think I know it too. Alexander glanced his way. Weren't you washing dishes? I followed Alexander into the study. All right, I said. Show me the question. Alexander Newman handed me a piece of scrap paper. This one, he said. I glanced at the question. Read it once. Then twice. Something felt wrong. You're learning sequences already? In middle school. Alexander hesitated, then looked a little regretful. It's a high school problem. I was just practicing. LMAO, just practicing. Girlie's getting baited and doesn't even know it. Weary talking high IQ villain here. Sure, he didn't take the college entrance exam because of the whole prison thing, but the tech he invents later literally destroys humanity. You know his brain's up there with the male lead. Female lead. So you're treating me like a fool now, huh? I gritted my teeth. No big deal. It's just high school math. I graduated from a top university. I've got this. 30 minutes later, the scrap paper was full. And still, no answer. Alexander had tried to speak several times, only for me to stop him each time. "Relax, I can do this." I said I've got it. Another hour passed. Oscar finally couldn't take it anymore. He pushed the door open and walked in. One glance at the problem. "This? You're bothering Sis for this? Even I know how to solve it." I stared at him. "Go ahead. End me." At that moment, I felt like I was the one most in need of redemption. Oscar didn't head back to the welfare home until it was very late. Before he left, he muttered, "You really have terrible taste, Sis. That kind of bad kid doesn't deserve anything." I knew he didn't actually care much about me. He just wanted to get under Alexander's skin. They were rivals, after all. I've already decided. I'm going with President Howard from the Howard Group. From now on, my name will be Oscar Howard. I'll live a better life than Alexander. Just watch. I chuckled and patted his head. All right. You win. You'll have the best life. A few days later, I completed the paperwork to transfer Alexander Newman to a new school. It was hot that day. I looked at my tiny pink scooter parked out front and, wisely, called a cab instead. The new homeroom teacher had already reviewed Alexander's transcripts and couldn't help but comment. "These scores are amazing." Another teacher chimed in with a smile. "And he's so good-looking too." Hearing that, I couldn't help the pride that crept into my own smile. Seeing how warmly the teachers welcomed him, I relaxed. Before leaving, I reminded him of a few things and stuffed his backpack full of snacks. I'd done my homework. When you're a student, snacks hit different. The other kids always had little cakes or biscuits from their parents tucked into their bags. That stuff? It gets you through the day. If other kids get treats, then our Alexander Newman gets some too. Share them with your classmates, alright? If you run out, I'll get you more. He looked down at his overstuffed backpack, lost in thought. But the peace didn't last long. Not long after, rumors started spreading around the school. Someone let it slip that Alexander was from the welfare home. One morning, after I dropped him off, I overheard some students whispering as they walked by. I heard Alexander Newman's adopted. Is that his mom or his sister? She looks way too young. Who knows? Maybe she just likes good-looking boys. You ever heard of a child groom? Who else would adopt someone like Alexander Newman? I heard even the kids at the orphanage didn't like him. Kids from those places. They're the ones no one wanted. That was it. I stepped forward and cut in, sharp but calm. Alexander Newman is no different from any of you. He has a home now. A real one. The system told me that, according to the original storyline, the crime syndicate had already started eyeing Alexander Newman. But luckily, his corruption value was slowly dropping. As long as we kept it under control, the main plot wouldn't go off track. What I didn't expect was that just a few days later, when I went to pick him up from school, I found out he'd gotten into a fight. One of his classmates explained, it was because Richard Richardson said you and Alexander Newman weren't really siblings. That you were either pretending or sleeping together. He said you only adopted him because he looked good. And then he started talking about your body, asking Alexander. Asking him if you were satisfying. My stomach dropped. My face darkened. He deserved a beating. What about Alexander Newman? Was he hurt? Did he win? I sent the female lead overreacting? The villain has always been the type to hit back twice as hard. He was already fighting at the welfare home. She's really treating the villain like a fragile child. If he stood there and took it, he wouldn't be the villain. But then the boy added, no. Alexander didn't even fight back. He provoked that fat guy on purpose and just stood there while he got beat up. That guy didn't hold back either. Another classmate chimed in as he passed. Yeah. Good thing the teacher came, or Alexander would have been in worse shape. Richard's mom's already in the principal's office. Alexander's at the school clinic now. Just then, I got a call from Alexander's homeroom teacher. Wind howled in my ears as I walked across campus, but all I could hear were those words. He didn't fight back. Alexander Newman, who always had that don't mess with me streak in his bones, who would never submit to anyone. Why would he just take a beating? The clinic curtain was half drawn, letting in a dim light. When I opened the door, Alexander was sitting quietly on the bed near the window while the school nurse dabbed disinfectant on a cut near his temple. His uniform collar was askew, revealing a large purple bruise near his collarbone. His sleeves were rolled up and deep scratch marks, still bleeding in parts, stood out vividly against his pale skin. And Richard Richardson stood nearby, his own uniform dusty but chin held high, not a trace of guilt in his expression. "You did this?" I asked coldly, locking eyes with him. He flinched. Shrinking under my gaze, Richard was just about to say something when a heavily perfumed woman in a pearl-studded dress shoved past me and threw herself between us. "What now? You want to hit my kid too?" He already apologized. Besides, he didn't mean it. From the bed, Alexander spoke up. His voice was soft, but carried a quiet, icy force. He did mean it. And I didn't fight back. Richard snapped, indignant. "You made me hit you. Mom, I don't want to get expelled." The homeroom teacher looked visibly uncomfortable and turned to Alexander, tone softening. "Alexander, Richard already understands what he did wrong. Maybe you could forgive him?" "No." Alexander cut him off flatly, his thin jawline taut and sharp, his eyes unblinking. "And intentionally injuring someone, even at school, requires compensation. Medical expenses won't be cheap. No euphemisms. No hints. Just blunt and clear. Pay up." The woman's expression turned ugly. She pointed at Alexander, shouting, "You're just some orphan nobody wanted. And you dare bully my son?" I let out a laugh. Cold and sharp. "He has a parent. I'm his guardian. Meanwhile, your son's out here yelling vulgarities in public. I would have thought he's the one lacking a mother. He's just a kid. It was a joke." Oh. There were plenty of students who heard it. Shall we call them in to repeat it all? We've got nothing to hide. I wonder where your son learned those lines. Because kids don't just imagine things like that, unless they've been hearing them at home. The woman stiffened, humiliated. She turned around and smacked her son across the head. "Shameful. Do you think you can even show your face at this school again?" She transferred a hefty sum into my account on the spot, then stormed out, dragging Richard behind her. The homeroom teacher sighed. "Miss Clark, you should be careful too. Kids this age, middle schoolers, they're very sensitive. And you." Before he could finish, Alexander interrupted. "She's doing just fine." The teacher's words caught in his throat. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, sighing instead. "All right then. Rest up, okay, Alexander." The nurse finished bandaging his forehead and stepped back. Looking at the bruises along his arms, I felt a knot tightening in my chest. I gently grabbed his wrist. "We're going to the hospital. What if there's internal damage?" "I'm fine." Alexander pulled his arm back and took the helmet from my hands. Mine was pink, decorated with a little strawberry sticker. His was blue, custom ordered, with little cat ears on top. It looked ridiculous on his pale, injured face. "Let's go home," he said. He handed me the pink helmet and walked toward the door. I followed, slipping it on and starting up my little electric scooter. "Sit behind me and hold on tight." "Okay." I felt the faintest movement behind me. Then two hands wrapped gently around my waist. His fingertips brushed the fabric of my waist, then snapped back, like he'd been burned. "What's wrong?" I glanced over my shoulder at him. Alexander Newman hesitated, then tugged awkwardly at the hem of my shirt. His voice was low, stiff with reluctance. "I was afraid it'd tear. You should eat more. I'm not made of paper, okay?" I smacked his knee lightly. "This is called being slim. Ever heard of it?" "I still think it's better to be a little chubby." He said it like a stubborn kid, voice carried away by the wind. I couldn't help laughing. Arguing with him over this was ridiculous. All right. With food as good as yours, who knows? Maybe I'll fatten up soon. There was a pause. Then he let out a soft barely audible, but clearly satisfied. Our little scooter cruised slowly down the road. The breeze puffed out my oversized t-shirt like a balloon. Plane trees lined both sides of the street, retreating behind us like a slow-motion film. I asked, "Why didn't you fight back earlier?" "When you were being bullied." Alexander lowered his eyes, fingers tracing the edge of the seat. His voice came faint through the wind, muffled and a little sulky. "I didn't want to cause you trouble." Something in my chest jolted, sharp and soft all at once. That night, Alexander Newman came down with a fever. "I'm fine. Just need to sleep it off," he muttered. But I suddenly realized how much older he was than his age. How he carried his dignity so carefully, as if it would break. Who really gets used to living in darkness? No matter how long he's endured cold looks and silent rejection, he was still afraid of being abandoned. I shoved the helmet back into his arms and said, without any room for argument, "We're going to the hospital." The cold medication dripped slowly through the foreline. When the nurse finished administering the shot, Alexander just furrowed his brows a little. Didn't even make a sound. I stayed by his side. He was the one with a fever, but he kept trying to comfort me, telling me he'd be okay. I asked what he wanted to eat, that I'd go get it for him. He glanced at the phone in my hand and tugged up the corner of his lips in a soft, teasing smile. "Anything. As long as it's not a love-packed breakfast." "Okay, rude." I opened the delivery app and angrily ordered half the menu. "Listen, if you ever think my cooking's bad, just tell me. We can eat out. No big deal. And if you're not feeling well, you say so." I thought for a second and added, "If someone bullies you at school, say something. Bottling it up will make you sick." Alexander looked up at me, watching the 4 drip fall rhythmically into the tube, each drop mirrored in his dark eyes. I put on a stern face. "Promise me." "Nod." His voice was barely a whisper. "Okay." Middle schoolers are notoriously forgetful. By the time the 8th grade midterms rolled around, Alexander Newman had blown the entire school away, ranking first by a landslide. He instantly became the talk of the school. Then, someone who'd grown up with him in the welfare home posted an anonymous thread, sharing stories about him. How he used to feed the stray kittens behind the building. How he took the blame for other kids' mistakes. How he shared his meals with the younger ones. And just like that, people stopped whispering about his background. The only thing they remembered now was that he was a genius. Every afternoon when I went to pick him up, I'd see groups of students circling around him at the school gate, asking questions, trying to befriend him. Alexander never turned them away, but he didn't seem particularly close to anyone either. He was quiet, reserved. As his guardian, I figured I should help him open up a little more. So one afternoon, I brought a few small bouquets from the flower shop and handed them to him. "To give to your friends," I said. He didn't really get it. But he still did as I asked, passed them out, one by one. Eventually, he came back with one carnation still in hand. "You had an extra?" He shook his head. "It's for you. You're giving me the flower I gave you to give away?" He scratched the back of his head, speechless. HLP, the villain kept all the flowers for himself and stashed them in his bag. He couldn't bear to give away the ones Sis gave him. Why does he low-key have green tea bitch energy? Watching closely now. Teenage boys grow fast. After Alexander Newman started high school, he lived on campus, so I only picked him up every 2 weeks. And the next time I saw him, I was a little surprised. He'd shot up from 5'9" to 6'1". His features had sharpened, too. Boyish roundness replaced by clean, defined lines. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "You've grown so fast." As he climbed onto the back of my pink scooter, he suddenly spoke up. "Oscar Howard transferred to our school." The name made something tighten in my chest. According to the system's storyline, Oscar would become a shining star in senior year, while Alexander would begin slipping into the criminal underworld. I frowned. "He hasn't bullied you, right?" Alexander didn't answer. He just looked out the window of the scooter. A tall boy was standing out front, arms wrapped around an absurdly heavy backpack. "Oscar?" I asked. Alexander sighed. "Yeah. He says he wants to come home with us." 5 minutes later, Oscar Howard was perched smugly on the back seat. "Long time no see, sis," he chirped. "Our car got sideswiped by a private jet on the way here, so I figured I'd hitch a ride. Though it seems like Alexander's not too thrilled about it." "Alexander? Heh. You actually got into high school? Must be thanks to sis," Oscar said as he sprawled out on my couch, casually waving a cat toy at Owen, who gave him exactly zero attention. Alexander handed him a glass of water. "Weren't you studying abroad? Why'd you come back?" "Nowhere's better than home," Oscar shrugged. "I heard you got into high school on a full scholarship?" Alexander didn't reply, but that silence said enough. Oscar lifted his chin. "Well, now that I'm here, next exam? First place won't be yours anymore." "Oh. I think I'm starting to ship this to." Oscar was supposed to study overseas, but the thought of not being able to compete with Alexander sent him running back to beg Mr. Howard. In the original plot, Oscar came back for the heroine. But come on, this isn't rivalry, it's obsession. Wait, is that limited edition watch on the villain's wrist? Hold up, you're right. Where did Alexander get the money for that? I blinked and looked at Alexander's wrist. The watch was indeed high-end. A quiet worry began to bloom in my chest. Could he have already started dealing with the syndicate? After high school started, Alexander got busy. He came home even less. So I dropped by the school from time to time with daily essentials. Nothing seemed out of place. Apart from Oscar's constant teasing and bickering, things stayed peaceful. "Sis, you really ought to worry more about me," Oscar whined once. "Alexander bullies me every day." "Oh, how?" Oscar tapped his chin. "He ignores me. You know cold violence is the worst kind, right? Told you. He was the worst kid in that orphanage." He punched at the air dramatically, then suddenly paused. "All right. I overheard him on the phone once. He said something about waiting until after the college entrance exam to deal with it. Know what that was about?" I froze. I knew exactly what it was about. The college exams went smoothly. Alexander did as expected. He got into MIT. Oscar had planned to attend Stanford. But the second he heard about MIT, he changed his mind. That summer, the two of them camped out in the living room, hogging the AC. Alexander sighed. "You're so childish. Don't you have a home?" he snapped. Oscar lounged lazily on the sofa. "Owen and Sis would miss me too much." One day, I decided to cook again. Redeem my honor in the kitchen. I was deep in culinary battle when Alexander got a phone call. I heard him say, "3 months away? Forget it. I don't trust her not to poison herself." Then he opened the kitchen door and plucked my